Let me ask you something personal. Not what you do, but how you think. Because how you think determines everything else. The walls around your life were not built by the world, but by your thoughts. Most people don't live in prisons made of bars. They live in prisons built of limited beliefs and slow decisions. Now, here's what I've found. Life doesn't wait. Opportunity doesn't knock twice. And greatness? Greatness doesn't show up for the person thinking small and moving slow. It shows up for the one who stretches their mind and acts before their fears find a microphone. So today, I want to challenge your mind and your motion, because thinking big without urgency is like having a map with no legs. And moving fast without vision is like running in circles with confidence. You need both. You need clarity in your thoughts and intensity in your steps. And that's how we break free from the average life, by raising the ceiling and shortening the timeline. Let me tell you something I learned early on in life. The size of your thoughts determines the size of your results. Most people don't fail because they lack the ability. They fail because they never give themselves permission to think beyond their current reality. They treat their present as permanent. And I've met too many capable people who've made themselves small, not because life told them to, but because their thinking never rose high enough to challenge the limits around them. I remember years ago sitting across from a young man who said, "I just want enough to get by." I looked at him and said, "Then that's exactly what you'll get, barely enough." And that's not just finances I'm talking about. I'm talking about health, relationships, leadership, contribution. Small thinking doesn't just limit what you earn, it limits who you become. Now, you don't need to be a philosopher to know this. The ancient Roman emperor Marcus Aurelius once wrote, asterisk. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Asterisk. That means if your thoughts are small, your life will reflect it. But if your thoughts are noble, bold, and expansive, your life will begin to stretch to fit that vision. Think of the farmer who only clears 1 acre of land. No matter how fertile the soil, he'll never harvest more than what he prepared for. The same is true with your mind. If your goals are small, your preparation will be minimal and your harvest will be thin. I've sat with business leaders who think globally and janitors who think like kings. The difference isn't education or position. It's imagination. Big thinkers ask bigger questions. Instead of asking, "Can I afford this?" they ask, "How can I afford this?" Instead of asking, "What's the least I need to do?" they ask, "What's the most I'm capable of?" You are not your circumstances. You are your standards. And those standards start with your thoughts. So the next time you catch yourself thinking small, remember this: you can't live a big life with a narrow mind. I used to think that life would change when luck arrived, when I met the right person, when the economy improved, when the wind shifted in my favor. But eventually, I learned something that transformed everything. Life doesn't get better by chance. It gets better by change. And change is never something you wait for. It's something you decide. One winter, I was broke. Not just in my wallet, but in my thinking. I blamed the government, blamed the taxes, blamed my employer, blamed the system, but none of those things changed my situation. What changed my life was when I stood in front of the mirror and realized the only thing I had control over was me, asterisk. That was the day I took responsibility. And that day marked the beginning of change. Heraclitus, the Greek philosopher, once said, asterisk, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it is not the same river, and he is not the same man. Asterisk. Everything around you is in motion time, seasons, opportunity. The only question is, are you moving or are you waiting for something to push you? People say, I hope things change, but hope is not a strategy. Choice is. You choose to learn a new skill. You choose to save the extra dollar. You choose to rise earlier, read longer, speak bolder. And every choice you make is either pushing you toward your future or pulling you back into your past. I once met a man who had the same job for 15 years. Same position, same complaints, same paycheck. When I asked him why he hadn't moved forward, he said, nobody ever gave me the chance. I said, friend, you don't wait for the chance, you create it. You see, when you embrace change, you take the steering wheel of your own life. You become a deliberate creator instead of a passive observer. And once that shift happens, once you realize you're not stuck unless you choose to be, your life starts to move in the direction you decide. One of the greatest illusions we fall for is that we have time, that we can start tomorrow, that the opportunity will still be waiting next week. But here's the truth I've learned. Success doesn't wait for the slow to decide. It rewards the ready. Urgency, not talent, is often what separates the doers from the dreamers. And urgency is not penance, it's purpose in motion. There was a time in my early days when I kept saying, one day I'll start. But the problem with one day is that it keeps moving further away. One day becomes 1 year, and 1 year becomes never. Until one day I looked at my bank account and realized that time wasn't the problem, my urgency was. The ancient Latin proverb says, asterisk, fortune favors the bold. Asterisk, not the cautious, not the hesitant, not the ones waiting for perfect timing. Boldness is urgency in action. You see, when you treat your goals like they can wait, your results do too. I've met people with brilliant ideas. I've heard plans that could change lives, but they never left the notebook. Why? No urgency. They wanted everything to be perfect before taking the first step. But perfection is just procrastination in disguise. Now, let me give you something practical. If you give yourself 30 days to do something, it'll take 30 days. But give yourself 3 days and suddenly you focus, you cut distractions, you act. Urgency compresses time, and compressed time multiplies results. In business, relationships, and personal growth, the people who win aren't always the most intelligent. They're the ones who move while others think about moving. I've missed opportunities not because I wasn't capable, but because I was too slow. And I've captured others, not because I was more prepared, but because I was faster to act. So ask yourself, what are you delaying that you know you need to do? Because every time you delay the decision, you delay the result. Achievement has a heartbeat, and its rhythm is urgency. Everyone wants results. Everyone wants the reward. But very few are willing to do what bridges the distance between where they are and where they want to be. And that bridge, my friend, is discipline. Discipline is the silent architect of success. It doesn't shout. It doesn't show off. But it builds everything that matters, brick by brick. I remember a season in my life when I had all the right goals written down, beautiful goals. Goals to become wealthy, to speak well, to grow strong, to lead others. But I was living by emotion, not by discipline. I worked hard when I felt like it. I saved when it was convenient. I studied only when I was inspired. And for a while I fooled myself into thinking that was enough. But it wasn't. Emotion is a poor master, and motivation is fickle. Discipline, on the other hand, doesn't ask how you feel. It asks asterisk. What's required? Asterisk. Socrates once said, asterisk. The first and greatest victory is to conquer yourself. Asterisk. That means doing what must be done when it must be done, whether you like it or not. Discipline is keeping your commitment long after the excitement of the goal has worn off. I meet people all the time who say, I'm just waiting for the right time. But let me tell you something. There is no perfect time. There is only now. Asterisk. Readiness is a mirage. It looks close from a distance, but the closer you walk, the further it shifts. If you keep waiting to feel ready, you'll still be standing in the same place 5 years from now, only older, only more frustrated. I've seen this in my own life. The first time I stepped on a stage to speak, I wasn't ready. I was nervous, unsure, and afraid of making a fool of myself. But I did it anyway. And you know what happened? I grew into the role. You don't grow before the start, you grow because of it. Aristotle once said, asterisk, we become just by doing just acts, temperate by doing temperate acts, brave by doing brave acts. Asterisk, you don't wait to be brave, you act, and courage follows. You don't wait to be confident, you take the step, and confidence is built through motion. I met a woman once who wanted to launch her business. She had the idea, she had the skills, but she kept saying, I need more time to prepare. I asked her, how long have you been preparing? She said, 3 years. I told her gently, you're not preparing anymore. You're hiding. You see, perfectionism is often just fear wearing a suit and tie. Waiting is easy. Starting is hard. But starting, even when it's messy, creates momentum. And once momentum begins, the path gets clearer. You don't need to know every step. You just need to take the first one. The farmer doesn't wait for a perfect sky to plant the seed. He plants, trusting the process. The same goes for your dreams. Start writing the book before you know the ending. Because the truth is, readiness is a decision, not a feeling. And if you keep waiting to feel ready, you'll wake up one day and realize you weren't waiting on the right time. The right time was waiting on you, asterisk. Let me tell you something that can change everything. You don't rise above your surroundings. You rise with them. Or you fall because of them. Environment is not neutral. It either fuels your growth or feeds your complacency. You become like the people you spend your time with, the conversations you listen to, the standards you absorb without realizing it. It's like osmosis. Your mind soaks in the atmosphere around it, whether you're aware of it or not. In my early years, I was working hard but thinking small. Not because I didn't have dreams, but because I was surrounded by people who didn't believe in dreaming. They complained about taxes, blamed the economy, joked about the rich. And for a while I laughed along with them until I realized I had started living by their expectations, not my own. The change came when I changed my environment. I remember the first time I sat down with a millionaire. He spoke differently. He didn't talk about surviving. He talked about strategy, service, systems. It lit a fire in me, not because he told me something magical, but because his presence raised my standard. I didn't want to go back to the comfort zone of complaining. I wanted to build. And that's the power of proximity. Birds that fly high don't flock with the ones that stay low. You've got to get around altitude thinkers. Read biographies of great people. Listen to conversations that lift you. Cut ties with voices that drain your purpose. Elevation is not an accident. It's a decision to rise and an environment that supports it. You see, you can't plant a palm tree in Alaska and expect it to thrive. The seed may be full of potential, but if the climate isn't right, it won't grow. The same is true for you. If your surroundings don't nourish your future, you won't reach it. So if you're serious about success, you don't just change your schedule, you change your setting. Let me leave you with something to carry beyond this room. Beyond this day, your life is far too valuable to be lived in neutral. The clock is ticking not to pressure you, but to remind you that potential has an expiration date. You weren't made to think small, move slow, or settle for average. You were designed to expand, to create, to lead. But that only happens when you decide to stretch your thinking, quicken your pace, raise your standards, and live like your days count, because they do. You don't need permission. You don't need perfect timing. What you need is belief. Belief in something bigger. Belief in yourself. Belief that action now is better than perfection later. So take what you've heard today and do something with it. Don't let it fade with the applause. Let it ignite a new direction. Think bigger. Move faster. Start sooner. Stay longer. Give more. Expect better. Because success is not something you pursue, it's something you attract by becoming a person of vision, urgency, and discipline. Now the pen is in your hand. Write a story worth reading. Build a life worth remembering. And make it count, starting today. Asterisk.